Hello and welcome to the Empower Her Collective show. I'm your host, Dr. Celia Corbo, entrepreneur and licensed chiropractor. Join us on our guest speaker episode as we dive into stories of remarkable women making a difference and transforming their dreams into reality. Today on the show, we have Larissa Menna, the founder of 217 Vintage. Larissa is the founder of the 217 Vintage store in Toronto and has spent the past decade building a beloved vintage brand. It all started when she teamed up with her seamstress, now a close friend, over the shared love of vintage. United by a passion for unique, timeless pieces and a desire to bring new life to old treasures, they decided to just go with it. Together, they built 217 Vintage into a thriving business that has become a beloved destination for vintage enthusiasts in Toronto. Their story is a testament to how shared passions and serendipitous connections can lead to incredible partnerships and lasting success. Hey, Larissa, how are you?
Hi, Celia. Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So tell us all about 217 Vintage because I've seen it since the beginning and it's
Mhm.
become this amazing place for vintage enthusiasts. And also, like, I feel like it's like your little baby.
It is.
So tell us more about that and how it got started and just like your journey into becoming a retail shop owner.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of funny how it all fell into place. So Liz, who is now my business partner, at first she was my seamstress. So many years back, maybe, oh, I don't even want to say, maybe 20 years ago,
We're dating
um,
ourselves here.
aging myself. So maybe about 20 years ago, when I was in high school and elementary school, so I would always get my stuff altered every single week.
Hmm.
So when I was about, I want to say 17, 18, I met Liz and she would alter all of my garments for me. So, and I would go in quite frequently. So I started going in about every week. Anything I purchased, I'd get it altered. So we kind of developed a friendship as well. And so I would just by seeing her so frequently. So I was always very into vintage, as was she. It was always a passion of hers. She actually had her own clothing line previously when she was in her 20s.
Hmm.
And so she was always in the fashion industry. She's an incredible seamstress. She's so talented. She's been doing it since she was in her teens, so a very, very
Hmm.
long time. So we would kind of talk about vintage and our love for vintage. And it was just for fun at the time, just collecting our own, for ourselves,
Hmm.
curating our own collections for our own closets. And I used to go to LA all the time because they have such amazing vintage. So on one of my trips there, I brought her back some vintage shorts just as a gift because I knew she loved vintage. And so she started looking into some vintage wholesaling here in Toronto after I brought her those shorts back. And she sent me a message. She said, "You know what? I found this wholesaler here in Toronto. There is a minimum and it's kind of high for just me to go alone to buy stuff for myself." She said, "Why don't we go, the two of us, and we'll just split it and we can pick and find a lot of good stuff." So I said, "Okay, why not?" We went, and of course, because it is quite a high minimum, we ended up with so much stuff that it didn't make sense for us to keep it for ourselves. So we ended up doing a pop-up shop on Queen Street, just one weekend, just the Saturday, Sunday. We ended up selling out in that
Oh, wow.
weekend, and we thought, you know what, maybe we have something here. So we kind of started off as just markets and pop-up shops,
Hmm.
and then on a whim, we kind of opened our first location on Queen Street, one of our pop-ups that we had for, I believe it was a month. Um, he just kind of offered us the space. He said, "What do you guys think? It's available. If you want it, sign for a year." And a year for a retail space, we thought, you know what? It's pretty rare. We don't have much to lose. Why don't we just go for it? We kind
Hmm.
of just went for it, and then it's taken off from there.
Yeah, I remember seeing because I think it was a cookie shop that you guys took over.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And it was pink on the
Yeah,
outside on Queen Street West.
yeah.
And every time I drove by, it was like Queen and Bathurst. So for anyone who's in Toronto, you probably are familiar with the intersection.
Mhm.
I would be like, oh my God, there's Larissa's shop. It just
Yes.
stood out so well. It was iconic in its own way, I guess you can say.
Mhm.
But wasn't there like a little situation that happened there, and then you guys had to move with like
Um,
wasn't there like a an accident, like a fire or something
Oh,
that
no, no,
happened?
no. So what happened was
Oh, okay.
so this was our first location. So
Okay.
our first location, it was pink. We ended up just kind of rolling with it because it was easy. We're just like, oh,
Yeah.
it's the pink store, and everyone thought it was so easy to identify. It was just it really stood out.
Yeah.
So we kind of went with it. So our lease had the space was also significantly smaller than our current space. So
Mhm.
this space was at Queen and Tecumseh, so it was
Mhm.
closer kind of to Trinity Bellwoods. And then we expanded and we moved a little further east to Queen and Portland, where we are
Mhm.
now. So it's
Mhm.
about double the size, this space. It's bigger space, a little more modern. So when we had first moved there, we were there for about, I want to say a year and a half when
Mhm.
we had a fire.
Yeah, that was
Um,
like when you told
little,
me that, I was like mortified for you. I was like, "Oh my god."
it was crazy, crazy. Everything that can happen to us has, but that's okay. We still persist. Um, so it was quite funny. So I was working that day. I was getting to the store. The street was closed, which is not rare for Queen. There's always kind of something going on. So I thought, you know what? It's kind of hard to access the store right now. I have some time. I'll just go grab my morning Starbucks, which I always do. So I went into the Loblaws there. There's a Starbucks. It was new at the time, so they were still kind of working on finding the proper staff. So they had just one person working. I think it was one of their first shifts. There's a lineup of 20 people. They'd take your order, open up the manual, try and make your drink. Like they were fresh. Okay. So it was taking time. So I'm like, and I'm about sixth person in line. So it
Yeah.
took a good half an hour. So I'm running late. But again, I'm thinking, no worries. The street's closed. I can't really get to the store anyways. Liz, who's my business partner, she sends me a picture. She's at her friend's house and they just have the news on in the background. She said, "Oh, look, our store's on the news." And any publicity is good publicity. We just saw a fireman speaking and they had it on mute. So they just saw a fireman speaking, in our store in the background. And I said, "Oh my God, Liz, that's so funny. Like how cool." Um, don't think anything of it. Then she calls me. She's like, wait a minute, are you at the store?" And I said, "Well, kind of. I'm up the street. I'm at Starbucks." She said, um, "I just noticed that it's our store that's on fire.
Oh my
We didn't even notice in the clip because I wasn't really paying attention that there's a ladder, there's firemen on our roof."
oh my
I
god.
said, "Oh my God." So I ran over from waited for my matcha, ran over from Starbucks.
You were fourth in line at
I
that point.
couldn't ditch it at that point. Um, I was in too deep. So headed over to the store. There's all these news outlets. There's like Global News, CBC. Everyone's with a camera in my face, microphone. "Oh my goodness, are you the owner of this store?" I'm like, "Oh my God." They all interviewed me. It was so funny because it was just Liz and I just couldn't even believe it. We were like,
Yeah.
we had no idea. So I waited. They had put it was actually apparently a pretty bad fire. There was four people rescued off the roof. It was Yeah, it was not good. So
It's not a vibe.
it was not good at all. So I ended up waiting. Luckily, one of the firemen was kind enough to kind of just give me a quick look. I said, "Please just let me look around. Let me see like what's salvageable. I just want to know what we're working with," because they said,
Yeah.
you can't come here. So unfortunately, because of the smoke mainly and the water damage was really what affected our store because the actual fire initially began. You know how Queen is, all the buildings are kind of connected.
Yeah.
So it was the building connected to us on the west side. So they broke through our store. They tore down the wall to kind of attack the fire and be able to put it out. So, which caused damage to our store because then all the smoke came in, and to get the smell of smoke out,
Yeah.
it's
Like
uh,
when we go camping, I
mhm.
can still smell the campfire after like 3, 10, 20 washes. Like I feel
Oh,
like It's just
Absolutely.
in there. It's in the fibers. Yeah.
It's true. It just lingers.
Yeah.
It's impossible to get out. So that was our main issue. So it took a year and a half
Wow.
of they redid the store 4 times. We kept failing inspection,
Oh my God.
kept having to be redone. Finally, we passed inspection this summer, June, um, much later than we had anticipated, especially since our initial estimate given to us by insurance was 3 weeks. So in a year and a half and 2 weeks, there's a
So like,
big
yeah, that's no problem.
discrepancy there. So it was very difficult dealing with that and insurance, of course, but we're so happy to be back. It's been amazing. We love Queen. That's always been home to 217, so
Yeah.
it's just the best. Hmm.
What honestly, the fact that you guys even overcame that, I feel like that is maybe one of your most difficult times in running
Yes.
the business because again, it's not easy to do building and permitting and things like that in Toronto because it takes forever and it's also really expensive. And
Hmm.
then the fact that you guys had to wait so long to then
Yeah.
get your store running, start making, money and profit all over again. It's just like, oh my God, like one after the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, I mean, after dealing with COVID,
Mm.
at our first location and all the closures, and then finally we're back in a good groove. But that's okay, you know?
Yeah. So how did you guys find the energy or like muster the courage to keep going and not just be like, okay, this location is not going to happen. We're going to
Hmm.
go back to like starting from scratch, pop-up shops and, doing market events and then building up again. How did you guys find that courage to keep going?
You know what? I mean, it was definitely tough at times for sure. There was a lot of times where we kind of were like, listen, we had a good run. Is it, who knows what's going on now?
Yeah.
They kept stringing us along. They kept telling us at this location, another month, one more month. We never had a definite or even an estimate of when we were opening. They just kind of strung it along until, like I said, it was a year and a half. So luckily, Liz and I have such a great relationship, and we really kind of lean on each other. So whenever one of us, we always hype each other up. So I mean, that definitely was huge, and we make such a great team and we really love what we do. We love
Hmm.
working together. We always have so much fun, and it's rare that her and I are actually like physically together in the same room. We kind of, the way we delegate the tasks, she's doing certain tasks, I'm doing others. So we typically don't actually work together. So when we are, we always have the best time. It's so much fun. We really love it. We're so passionate, and we just
Yeah.
kept going, and we're really
Yeah.
glad we did because we're so happy to be back on Queen, and truly it is home for 217.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so how is it working in a partnership? Because you hear so many, I don't know if I would say it rumors, but word on the street is working in a partnership is really tough. It's like a marriage,
Mhm.
it either works or it doesn't. And now Liz, you've known for so long and you've built such a great relationship with, but how do you guys keep the love alive in your business? So even if you do come to a conflict type of,
Mhm.
point, you still manage to overcome it and keep that relationship strong.
Yeah, I mean, we're quite fortunate that we do get along the way we do, and we kind of trust each other, and we trust each other's decisions. So
Mhm.
if it's depending on what it is, who's handling it, if Liz is there and she's there that day, I trust that she'd make the right decision for our business, and we just go with it. We're really good with that. Certain things, of course, we discuss, we go over it together. We're really good at kind of hearing each other out, coming to an agreement. We've honestly, knock on wood, never fought. Um, we really are. I'm very lucky that we have such a good relationship and that we do work so well together. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
I think also, they say distance makes the heart grow fonder. I guess you could put that into a business as well, because I think if you were to see each other every single day, it would create more tension. That's just coming from maybe personal experience
Mhm.
saying that. Some people do work really, really well together. But I think the fact that you guys are apart working on different things to make it a complete whole company or a whole business, I think that also adds to it as well.
I mean, we also do text all day, every day.
Okay.
So, I mean,
I'm sure you guys talk to each other.
we're never not speaking. We're either on the phone or texting. I mean,
Yeah.
if Liz changes her socks, she's probably telling me. Like, we literally tell each other everything all day. But I do agree with you. If maybe we were kind of like on top of each other every day, like
Yeah.
it may make it a little more difficult. But I think because even like Liz, a lot of times will do some of the buying. She does have such a good eye for vintage and she's so knowledgeable.
Mhm.
So I know that when she's there doing that, I really trust her opinion. I trust her decisions. And I mean, there's times, of course, she'll message me, what do you think? If she's
Yeah.
unsure about things, but mostly we really value each other's opinions and respect each other. And I think that makes it work so well. I'm never worried about what Liz is doing or her
Yeah.
decision. So I think that makes such a big difference too.
Mhm.
Whereas if we kind of try to make every single decision together, it's probably
Yeah.
difficult to come to an agreement all
Yeah.
the time, right?
Yeah, and it's really beautiful that you have that relationship with your business partner because again, I think it brings down the stress levels, which, is
Mhm.
what I work with when I'm dealing with female entrepreneurs and helping them overcome their burnout, their stress, their,
Right.
problems in health because again, it can be very stressful to always
Yes.
be looking for that validation or not having that trust with yourself or with your business partner. So, the fact that you guys have that is amazing.
Yes, thank you. No, I'm very fortunate. And
Yeah.
we do work really well in that sense is that let's say Liz is like, you know what, I can't anymore. I'll step in or vice versa. I'm like I've had a really tough week. I can't today. Liz will step in. So we're really good with that and I'm so fortunate that I have
Yeah.
such a great partner. Mhm.
Yeah, I want to kind of dive into that a little bit with you, but like the health aspect of things.
Mhm.
And again, like running your own business, it's not an easy task. There is a lot of moments, even in my career, where I'm like, I don't know if I can do this for the long term.
Mhm.
So, how have you guys overcome that sense of fatigue or feeling like you're going to burn out or taking care of your health rather, so you can keep the business strong and keep it successful in your own way?
Right. That's definitely, it is very difficult. And of course, as you know, when it's your business, like you said, it's your baby, it's always on your mind.
Yeah.
I'll I can't sleep at night. I go to bed and I'm just rethinking things. Oh, need to do this. I shouldn't have done this. What can we do to improve that? You can never really turn it off,
Hmm.
as you know. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's difficult for sure. And I think any entrepreneur kind of struggles with that. It's all on you, right? If
Yeah.
it goes well, it's great for you. If it doesn't, it's still on you. So, I think it's always on you, right? So it makes it very difficult. So I think for us, um, what is helpful is knowing we can count on each other and even just
Hmm.
talking things over. Like we really try not to dwell on, things that have happened in the business. Of course, every business has hardships, decisions maybe we made that we were like, you know what, we could have made a better decision.
Yeah.
So we really count on each other, which I think we're very lucky. I do think, I mean, as to what you were saying earlier about that, it's kind of hard to find, a partnership that works. I also feel like when you do have one that works so well, it does make it so much easier because you have
Yeah.
someone to count on, right? So
Yeah.
whereas you're just carrying the burden yourself. So I think
Mhm.
for us, that's really huge that we do have such a great relationship. We're so open with each other. Like I said, if I'm feeling that way, Liz steps in, like no questions
Mhm.
asked. And I do the same for her in a second. So, and we're really there for each other. We really talk things out. We try to stay kind of positive and also take time for ourselves. So I think that makes a huge difference. And now, as the business has expanded, now we're adding more staff. So that really helps. Whereas initially, for the first few years, it was Liz and I doing everything, right? So we were
Yeah.
wearing every hat. So
Yeah.
that, of course, adds a lot of stress. There's only so many things we can be doing at the same time. So now, as the business is growing and we have more staff and we're able to prioritize more what we really need to be focusing on, I think, we're more in our groove
Mhm.
and
Yeah. How has it been scaling the business? And, did you ever imagine that it would get to this point? Or has it always been like, wow, here we are, wow, here we are? Or was it like, we're hitting our goals, we're getting exactly to where we want to be?
No, we are, but I think that Liz and I were so hard on ourselves with that.
Yeah.
I mean, in that regard, we don't realize like how far we've come as a business,
Hmm.
which is very exciting. Like we are reaching our goals, and um, for us, even expanding on Queen, like that was really one of our huge goals, and we're there now, and it's going really well for us. We love that location. I don't know if you've been to our new one on
No, but I was
Queen.
going to say, don't you guys have a second location?
No, we don't. So we
Oh,
did.
no.
So
Okay.
initially we did have one.
Yeah.
In okay, so we had our Queen location.
Yeah.
We were basically told we weren't really reopening there. We had opened a second location, um, thinking we weren't going to go back to our original store on Queen.
Okay. The one that
Um,
was on fire and that took a year and
yes,
a half. Okay.
yes, that a year and a half. So basically, at a year and a half point, we kind of thought to ourselves, okay, we had a discussion like, what's really going on here? They keep
Yeah.
telling us a month. Initially, they told us 3 weeks.
Yeah.
They keep telling us another month. Is this ever happening? So at one point, we just said, you know what? It's either kind of that's when we had the discussion. Are we going to throw in the towel? Are we going to move forward? Are we going to expand? Are we going
Hmm.
to go elsewhere? So that's when we had opened elsewhere. We were running our business there for the time being. Kind of it was very at the 11th hour that they told us Queen Street would be back up and running. We
Hmm.
with no notice, basically a week's notice.
Oh, wow.
We were like, oh, and we were already locked into that lease, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of just went with it. We had to make a decision of what made most sense for our business at the time, and it was Queen.
Yeah.
So once we got out of our second lease, we just exclusively were back at Queen. Um, we are working on a second location. We're trying to kind of iron that out. So we've got to
Hmm.
just see, but we're not trying to jump into anything. We want to make sure that's really the right decision for us, right location. Right now, Queen is great. It's the best spot for us. We
Yeah.
love it there.
There's a lot
And
of vintage shops there. I find just even like the vibe
mhm,
is really tailored to that demographic.
yes, definitely. I
Yeah.
think it's definitely a destination for a lot of people looking for vintage or unique
Hmm.
finds. So it's just a great spot for that. So
Hmm.
I mean, we'll see what the future holds. Right now, we're super happy there, and we'll just have to see what's next. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, tell us a little bit about fashion and vintage clothing because
Hmm.
first of all, for those of you who don't know Larissa, she's a very dear friend of mine. We actually grew up together. We are part of the Smith family, so actually we call each other cousins. So I've seen Larissa grow up, and she always had an amazing sense of style. And then
Oh, thank you.
even at my wedding, you wore this Zara dress, and you're like, "Cease, it's backwards." And I'm like, "You're wearing a dress backwards," but it looked amazing. So
Oh, thank
you've
you.
always had such an eye for style.
Oh,
And
thank
when
you.
it comes to my mind, when I think vintage, like again, no offense to vintage clothing, but I think
No.
okay, like heavy patterned, cloth and very like, dated colors and things like
Mhm.
that. So how do you guys take the vintage and combine it with the modern or make it like a retrending article of clothing that people feel like okay, yeah, I definitely need to incorporate this into my wardrobe?
So, what really sets us apart in the vintage industry is we try to very carefully curate our entire collection. So, we
Mhm.
never buy in bulk, we don't buy by the pound. Each item in our store is handpicked and
Wow.
curated for our boutique by Liz and I. We don't have
Mhm.
anyone else doing the buying. It's primarily Liz, but it's both by us. We don't just throw an item on the floor. Everything has been hand selected.
Yeah.
So I think that makes a really big difference. And I think that you could kind of sense that when you come into the store. We do get a lot of comments like, oh my goodness, everything is so nicely curated. So we do put a lot of effort into that. So it's really appreciated when people do recognize that.
Mhm.
So for us, I mean, I've been a fan of vintage my whole life, just like Liz. And so For us, it's more finding timeless pieces that you can always keep in your wardrobe.
Mm-hmm.
There's so, and just the quality of the vintage clothing and of clothing nowadays just doesn't compare.
I
Everything
was
was
actually going to say, tell us more
right,
about that.
right. Everything was made so well.
Yeah.
A lot of items were, handmade, just so incredible. So I think those are really great quality pieces, and
Mm-hmm.
investment pieces sometimes to have in your wardrobe that are staples. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, for my style, from day to day, I'm really casual. I love a vintage pair of Levi's jeans that I have reworked for like the perfect fit, which we offer in store. So I I love, yeah, a good classic pair of denim. You can't go wrong. I'm super casual, so I like to stick to band tees, vintage tees. Those are my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many amazing pieces. Like we really specialize in vintage blazers and designer blazers, which are so amazing and truly timeless pieces that you can always have in your wardrobe. Like they're just staples. So I think items like that are so amazing to keep vintage. And then of course you can rotate in some trendier pieces that you find, but all these classic pieces, they really never go out of style.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Honestly, my aunt gave me a pair of Versace jeans once upon a time.
Mhm.
And I was young. I didn't understand. I'm like, oh, these just don't fit. I ended up giving them away. And to this day, she like harps on me for that. She's like, I gave you my Versace jeans and you gave them away. I'm like, well, they didn't fit.
Oh
I'm
my
like a
gosh.
teenager. I know, huge mistake. But how do you classify something as a vintage? Like what makes an article of clothing just not, a modern piece that's old, for lack of a
Right.
better term, and something that's more timeless, more vintage?
Right. So technically vintage is classified as 20 years or older.
Okay.
Um, and that would qualify it as being vintage. For it depends also on what there's different people who collect certain items.
Mhm.
So vintage collectors, they would obviously be more unique pieces, maybe specific pieces that they only made a certain amount of, very difficult to come by. Um, so those are more collectors vintage, but in
Mhm.
regards to just being vintage, 20 years or older would classify the item as vintage. And
Okay.
then we also do, sorry,
No.
carry dead stock, which so dead stock vintage would be brand new with the tag,
Oh,
never worn, but still vintage. So it's over 20 years old.
yeah. And you mentioned that LA was where you guys were starting
Mhm.
to purchase your vintage
Mhm.
clothing from. Have you noticed that the market has been increasing in Toronto, or are you still going to LA and doing a lot of your finds there?
So we do most of our buying in LA.
Hmm.
The vintage there to us it just doesn't compare. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Everything that you can get there is so amazing. The quality, and just the selection. There's so
Mhm.
many spots that we're able to go to and just buy everywhere, right? Whereas
Yeah.
here it's not the same market.
Hmm.
There's less people doing it. And it's just not the
Yeah.
same, unfortunately. It doesn't compare.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so you mentioned briefly before, you mentioned briefly before about COVID
Mhm.
and how you guys had to pivot and things like that. So again, being a retail store,
Mhm.
it's very in person. You're going to places to hand pick. How did you guys have to pivot in a time where everything became very online, which with e-commerce, it's, I
Mhm.
would say, relatively easy to transition, but how did you guys keep the store afloat and have to pivot so quickly into a different model compared to what you're doing now?
Right. So for the vintage industry, it is difficult in the sense that
Mm,
it's vintage sizing is also so different. So
right. Yeah.
if you look at, let's just say a size 4 now and a vintage size 4, absolutely not the same.
Yeah.
So in that regard, you really, and because everything, there is one of every piece, it
Right.
does make it very difficult to not see it in person. Also, feel it, feel the garment, feel the quality. It's
Hmm.
just so different from
Hmm.
vintage pieces to a current
Yeah.
piece. So it kind of is really important in the vintage industry to be able to feel the item, try
Yeah.
the item on, see it
Yeah.
in person. So that definitely makes it very difficult to be an e-commerce
Yeah.
store based on that, right? When
Yeah.
it's so important and there's only one item and you can't return it. So it does make it very difficult. And there's a lot of people, a lot of our regular customers that they love vintage. So the relationships that we make with them is so nice. It's nice to see them in store. For people who love vintage, typically it's about the hunt and you find that amazing piece because you don't know what you're going to find, right?
Yeah.
So that's for that reason as well. It is really important to be in stores. So when when COVID hit, we were of course very worried about that and how we were going to pivot
Right.
because it's so important to to see it in person.
Right.
So we did kind of transition to online. We had just our website and we were selling exclusively on there. Luckily, we were so grateful throughout the pandemic. I guess a lot of people were bored at home a lot of time. We
Yeah.
did do really well with our online sales throughout the pandemic. So we're really grateful for that. And we were able to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but now, and with the store, we kind of stopped with doing any online just because
Mm-hmm.
it is so tough and
Yeah.
it also doesn't make sense because there is only one of every item
Yeah.
and garments move so quickly on the floor. We usually get our new arrivals on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
They're usually gone by the Sunday. And
Yeah.
because there's only one of every item, for us,
Mm-hmm.
it just doesn't make sense. Maybe in the future, we'll kind of get back into it. But
Yeah.
for right now, it's strictly in store. Hmm.
Yeah. So considering that you guys only have one of each item,
Hmm.
I'm sure you have to keep up with your social media, your
Yeah.
marketing, telling people that you have new garments in stock. So how is your marketing? How is your social media? How do you guys pan that out so it doesn't burn you out? Because I know with me, I love social media, but to
Hmm.
be on it all the time, I'm like, okay, wow, like I'm over this.
Yeah,
But
of
how do you
course.
guys keep it going where it is your lifeline to the online world, but
Hmm.
it's not going to be your demise because you just can't handle it anymore?
Right. So I think for us, like I said, it is so difficult to promote
Yeah.
even a particular item because there only is one of it. So for us
Yeah.
to take all this time creating content to post an item that already sold in the store this morning when it hit the floor, and now by the time I post this reel, it's
It's
gone.
over. It's
It's
gone.
which is
Yeah.
always the case, which is why
Yeah.
we can't have an online store because we would get our new arrivals. So it takes so much time to be measuring each item, right? Photographing it. By the time we put them online, all of them already sold out in store. So it
Yeah.
just doesn't make a lot of sense. So with our Instagram, especially, what we've kind of tried to focus more on is more of we do an outfit check for the day so that
Hmm.
it's more not necessarily a specific garment that we're trying to
Okay.
sell because it is
Yeah.
so difficult to do that when there's only one of everything, but maybe more just a vintage heel with a vintage pair of denim and a great vintage leather jacket. So
Hmm.
that it's just a great outfit inspo and you'd want to come in and maybe recreate the look, but maybe not necessarily exactly the items that I was wearing. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what we kind of more focused on. It does it does take a lot out of you for sure to always be
Yeah.
on socials, always be creating content. And it's a lot of work. So, I mean, we are trying to get better in that. We're really not great at social. Liz and I always say we're old and we're not good at it, but
Vintage.
we're vintage. We're really on brand. Um, so we are trying to get better at that because it is such a crucial element to the business.
Yeah.
So we definitely have to keep working on our reels. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I have to say I love your reels. I love everything that you
Thank
guys
you.
post on social media. So
Thank
how
you.
did you, apart from just word of mouth, how do you keep the word spreading about 217 and keep people knowing that you are the place to go to in Toronto for vintage finds?
You know what? I mean, we definitely need to improve with our marketing. But we've been so grateful that up to this point, it really has been word of mouth. So,
Yeah.
I think we're kind of well known on Queen. We've been at the same location for a while. We have a lot of regulars who come. They
Mm-hmm.
bring a lot of their friends. We get a lot of tourists as well on Queen, which is
Yeah.
great,
Yeah.
who do become customers, which is because we will ship.
Mm-hmm.
About for people's like if they request it, we'll do it. We don't typically offer that, but for some regulars who aren't from here,
Yeah.
we'll do that for them. So it's really nice. We maintain those relationships
Mm-hmm.
and we just have a lot of returning customers. Yeah,
Yeah.
word of mouth.
I find that's the best way to
Yeah.
grow a business.
Hmm.
Like I do Facebook ads for my chiropractic clinic, and it's
Hmm.
wonderful because I get to meet a lot of people. But I find the ones that found you organically or word of mouth or, on the street and like, oh, what's this? It's such a authentic
Hmm.
relationship and there's
Yes,
so much trust already when they meet you. It's like they already know who you are and they've sought you out or they're curious to know who you are as
right.
opposed to just like an ad where like, oh, I saw you and I'm kind of curious and tell me and try and sell me. It's like it doesn't feel as authentic and the connection
I
doesn't
agree.
feel as long lasting. So I agree. Word of mouth and the way you guys have built it is the best way.
Yes, no, thank you. I agree. And it's so true. Like you said, we've definitely had some people come in who may have seen an ad because in the
Mhm.
past we had put
Yeah.
some just promotions on Instagram. But it's true, like the real customers that are repeat and we've built such great relationships with, it was, like you said, super organic. They kind of maybe stumbled in, they were walking on Queen, heard through a friend.
Yeah.
They asked someone where they got something, they mentioned our store. Those are really the great relationships we kind of built and they're returning customers. And it's so nice to have our regulars too, because they know we get our new arrivals Friday. So we'll have people come back, every Friday, Saturday, coming to take a look at what our new arrivals are. So it's really nice to build those relationships.
Yeah. No,
Hmm.
it's amazing. And the fact that you guys build this, just off of two girls that just love vintage, it's really amazing to see where you guys
Thank
are
you.
now. And yeah, I'm just so happy to be following you so personally in your journey with it.
Thank you so much.
Of course. If you were to go back and tell yourself, one piece of advice
Hmm.
to, for today, Larissa, or even for future Larissa, what would you say in regards to business or health or growing 217?
You know what? I would say, looking back, I would say to myself, you know what? Every decision we made, every mistake really brought us to where we are today and where we're supposed to be. And I'm so grateful for where we are together, Liz and I, as a partnership, as a business. Um, I think you've just kind of got to work hard, trust yourself. You're gonna make mistakes, but
Mm-hmm.
that helps you. You learn, you truly do. I know it's people always say this, but truly the only way to learn is by making that
Yeah.
mistake,
Yeah.
learning from it. You're never going to know what the right decision is. You've just got to do what feels best and right for you in the business. And you kind of got to roll with it. And sometimes you're not really going to know what you're doing. And you've got to just roll with it. You've got to work hard. You've got to take whatever's coming at you. And you've
Yeah.
just got to go through and push through. And I think a lot of times, even when things feel like, they won't pass or it's hard and you don't know, I think you just got to push through.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
I completely agree with that
Hmm.
statement because I always say there's no such thing as failure. It's just a learning.
Hmm.
But it's hard when you're the one that has to be learning
Of
because
course,
you're like,
of
oh
course.
my God.
Yeah, when you're going through
Why
it,
does this keep happening to me? Or, why
right.
are we in this situation? But that is definitely great advice. And it definitely got you guys to where you are today and just to keep growing.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Amazing. And Larissa, where can everyone find you, whether it be social media or your in person on Queen?
So we are at 559 Queen Street West, which is Queen in Portland, right by the Loblaws. And our Instagram is at the 217 shop. I don't think there's ats anymore, but Liz always says at.
Okay.
Um, and she's aging us even further. So now I say at. So Instagram is the 217 shop. And that's where you can find us for now. We don't have an online portal, unfortunately. So it's just in store, or you can check out our Instagram.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And to
Thank you
everyone
for
listening,
having
of
me.
course, of course. I was so happy that you agreed to be on. And it's actually so funny how it happened because we're at a wedding. And I
Yeah.
just look at Larissa and I'm like, we're the only entrepreneurs in the Smith family. Like, what? like, let's team up. Let's do a podcast episode. So I'm so happy that you were able to share
Me
with us more
too.
about the 217 shop and all the vintage finds that you guys collect. And
Mhm.
yeah, thank you everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you at the next one.